All right, hello there. Just doing another episode in my Advanced Cicerone exam adventures here. This episode is going to be focusing on the syllabus once again for section 4, which is titled Beer Ingredients and Brewing Processes. I have this spiel that I go through where I kind of review the details of the scoring and then diving into the syllabus, comparing it to the Cicerone Level 2 syllabus to see what's new. So, with that, let's get into it. All right, so here we are. Got my PowerPoint set up here so we can dig into section 4 of the syllabus, Beer Ingredients and Brewing Processes. There's only 2 sections here. Looks like, oh, it's not going to be that much, but it's actually a lot. So luckily I have a nice local craft beer with me for this adventure. Cross-check, Czech style lager from 902 Brewing in Jersey City. Let's do this. So I'll start with my usual review. I like to look at the Advanced Cicerone scoring breakdown right from the website. You'll see this section is overall for all the different exam sections written oral tasting, 20% of the material. So it's a pretty hefty chunk. But when you look at it, it's exclusively for the written exam. It's not really that relevant for the oral and tasting exams. So what does that really mean in the scoring breakdown? For me, when I'm focusing on just the written exam, you'll see here it's actually tied for first place with 26 and 2/3% of the overall exam is going to be tailored to this section. So it's very relevant. And I'm really focusing on scoring here because the overall exam, you need a passing score of 80% and at least 75% on tasting. And I say this because I am going to bank on just getting a 75 on tasting. So I really want to maximize my performance on the written section. So when I run the numbers here, if I rock the oral exam, I still need to get a 79% on the written. If I get 50% of the oral exam, which is not that great, but quite possible, I need an 85% on the written exam. And if theoretically I bomb the oral exam, I can still pass if I get a 92 on this written exam. So I'm going to really be trying to swing for the fences on this one. But with that, let's just dive into this section and compare what's new compared to the Certified Cicerone Level 2 syllabus. So we start in section A, ingredients. We go into grains, and you'll see we have a section for malted barley. And some of this is from level 2, the properties of barley related to brewing, barley cultivation, and stages of the malting process. But you'll see in that little section 2, you don't just have to know about some species of barley, you have to know a little bit more about the different varieties and also the cultivation areas. So anything I highlight in yellow is something that's definitely new in level 3 here. Moving on, we have a section about process variations that lead to different malt types, the kiln-based malts, the kiln specialty malts, the stewed malts, and then roasted. But now we have a whole separate section on malting variations, specifically talking about roasting drums and floor malting. So that's new content. Then there's a section for wheat, oats, rye, and other specialty grains, but then a whole deep dive into that wasn't there on level 2. So the characteristics of the different forms. So raw, malted, flaked, torrefied, and roasted. The contributions of these to the wort and the beer, and then the requirements for processing and using these specialty grains. I think once again, the use of corn and rice in beer is carried over from level 2, the contributions to the wort and the beer, requirements for processing, the styles that use corn and rice, and then moving on to hops. So the anatomy of the hop plant and cone, cultivation and processing. In level 2, you just had to know about the structure and layout of the hop field. But now for the Advanced Cicerone exam, you also have to know about the life cycle of hop plants, attending to the hop plant, knowing about pruning and training. So diving into the whole hop cultivation here. Also, you need to have factors affecting yield and quality, agronomic considerations, the climate, the different pests and diseases that affect hops, pollination, also knowing about harvesting, drying, and baling of hops. And then once again, some more knowledge on storage, processing, and delivery to breweries is still needed. Moving into the growing regions, we still cover them. Continental Europe, okay, they talk about Germany, Czech Republic, Belgium. But now within Germany, you have to also dive a little deeper, knowing about Hallertau, Spalt, and Tettnang, and in Czech Republic, knowing about Saz. And then also moving into continental Europe, you still have Slovenia, Poland, and France, but now also Spain is mentioned. And now in Britain, it used to just be Britain, but now we're diving into the regions within Britain. So you have Kent, Sussex, Herefordshire, Worcestershire, if I said that properly. All new, different level of knowledge here. United States, Yakima Valley, Washington, Oregon, Idaho. You got Australia and New Zealand, but now other regions are mentioned. So knowing about China, Japan, and South Africa. So the categories of hops, we're still going to have to know about the bittering hops, the aroma hops, noble hops, dual use hops. Then moving into chemistry, we have alpha acid isomerization, flavor and aroma impact of hop oils. But now, diving a little bit deeper, talking about four major compounds: submersine, humulene, caryophyllene, farnesene, and then additional compounds on top of those. So linalool, geraniol, 4-MMP. So really knowing about the essential oils and compounds that are in the hops. Moving on to hop forms and advanced hop products used in brewing. Previously, we had to know about whole hops versus pellet hops versus extracts, maybe knowing about the alpha acid and hydroisomerized alpha acids, which are the ones used in skunk-resistant beers, the ones that are served in green bottles. But now we also have to dive into the different types of hop pellets, T90 versus T45, for example. Also, they're talking about isomerized alpha acid and essential oils. And then another whole new section here, hop forms and advanced hop products used in brewing. So novel hop products, lupulin powder, also known as cryo hops, and then other novel hop products. It seems every year or two now there's a whole new trend that comes into the industry and you start seeing beers talking about the use of the new latest trendy hop. And then moving into the hops usage and effects during brewing, still talking about the bittering contribution, flavor and aroma contributions in the boil, in hot wort, steep, or also known as whirlpool, and then dry hopping, but then diving slightly more into dry hopping, talking about hopcrete. And then also more novel uses, mash hopping, first wort hopping, wet hopping, and hopbacks. Moving on to yeast. So the taxonomy of yeast. So we have first, there's ale yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, talking about this, having producing esters and levels which give fruity flavors to the finished beers. Then some possess a certain gene, and you can read this here, the POF plus or PAD plus. This is commonly seen in certain beers with phenolic flavors such as clove, nutmeg, and or white pepper. The intentional use of this, and then the unintentional appearance. Moving on to lager yeast, they talk about it, the different namings of it, and how it generally does not produce esters or phenols in the appreciable quantities, resulting in a focus on malt and hop character. So lagers generally are letting the malt and hops come through, and the yeast is just essentially creating alcohol for the most part. But then we have a whole bunch of new content here. So knowing about the factors that are impacting fermentation characteristics, the aeration, pitching rate of the yeast, fermentation temperature, the yeast health, and then novel yeast products. So kveik, thiol boosting yeast, diacetyl free yeast, and other novel yeast products. Yellow means new. Then talking about non-Saccharomyces organisms. So we have Brettanomyces, but we don't just have Brett. We have the different types of Brett. So B. bruxellensis and B. anomalis. Then there's Acetobacter, Lactobacillus, and Pediococcus. Then there's the intentional use of these non-Saccharomyces organisms, and then the unintentional appearance of them. Moving on to water. So water makes up 90% of the weight of beer. So it's an important thing to consider. The chemistry of the water. Previously, we had to know about chlorine and some off flavors associated with that and common techniques for removing that. But now we have a whole section on minerals: calcium, carbonate, bicarbonate, chloride, sodium, sulfate. More into the chemistry of water. Again, the water cycle and sources of salts, but now talking about permanent and temporary hardness in the water, alkalinity, the water traits of classic brewing cities. So we have Munich, Pilsen, Burton-on-Trent, but now also London and Dublin are added to that list. Moving on to other ingredients. So the specialty ingredients here. First, we have sugars. Fermentable sugars. You'll see the new ones are sucrose and invert sugar syrup. So candy sugar was in level 2, and corn sugar, dextrose, glucose also were. Non-caramelized sugars, caramelized to various degrees. So sugars like honey, molasses, agave. But now we also have specialty sugars in that mix: Demerara, Jaggery, Pilon, Silo. Not familiar with that, but I'm going to have to be. And then non-fermentable, we have lactose. Then moving on to fruits and vegetables. But we also have to dive slightly more into that and know about thiol boosting products. Now, in the herbs and spices section, we have the common cooking herbs and spices. We have chili peppers, coffee, cocoa, chocolate, teas, but now gruit and traditional herbs. And then a whole other section called other flavorings. And then here we have to know about considerations regarding the addition of specialty ingredients. So when and how they're added, what form the ingredient is in, whether it's whole, pureed, etc., and the process variations required to accommodate adding these types of ingredients. And then also the historical precedent for adding these non-traditional ingredients. Moving on to processes now. So in processes, we have milling, and we used to always, in level 2, know about the possible flavor impact of milling on the finished beer. But now we have to know about the objectives of milling, the variations in mills and milling techniques, and the qualitative traits of a proper grind. Moving on to mashing, the objectives of mashing, but now we also have to know about the major enzymes that are active during mashing and their impact on the beer attributes. Now, in the different mashing methods section, we had infusion mash, cereal mash, step mash, and decoction mash, but now turbid mash is also in there. Lautering. All right, so the objectives of lautering. The general process of lautering, so talking about initiating the wort runoff, doing the Vorlauf, which is recirculating to set the grain bed and capture all that sediment, beginning to collect the wort for boiling, and then sparging, where you're rinsing the grains. But now also having to know about what are the potential impacts of lautering on the beer character and flavor. In boiling, so the process and objectives of boiling, the inputs and the outputs, the significant physical and chemical changes, the flavor impacts of the boil. But now we have to also know about the different heating methods and the equipment variations. In whirlpool, all right, the objectives of a whirlpool, the general operation of whirlpool, including wort removal. But now we also have to know about alternatives to whirlpooling, such as a wort strainer, cold flotation, a hot back, and a cool ship. And then in chilling, we have methods of wort chilling, heat exchanger, and cool ship, the flavor issues associated with wort chilling. And in aeration and pitching, so the timing of aeration within the brewing process, the reasons for wort aeration, and then the potential flavor impact of aeration. In fermentation, the general description of fermentation. So fermentations with different organisms, ale, lager, mixed culture. Mixed culture is new topic here. And then maturation after primary fermentation. Major biochemical inputs and outputs, fermentation flavor compounds, but also now biotransformation. The equipment used for fermentation, variations in fermentation parameters. So in the past, in level 2, fermentation temperature was really the only level of detail to be known here. But now we have to know about aeration, pitching rate, diacetyl rest, yeast health, and the fermenter geometry. In lagering, the objectives of lagering, the lagering temperature and duration, the impact on the finished beer characteristics, but now also a unique practice of use of neutral wood strips or chips. Interesting. And then aging, the vessel materials. So stainless steel or new wood versus previously used wood. And now the factors influencing flavors produced during wood aging. So prior use of the vessel, residual flavors from other liquids, and microflora. That was the level of depth in the level 2 syllabus. But now we have a lot more to consider. Porosity and microaeration, the impact of the vessel size, so the surface to volume ratio, the char or toast of the wood, the length of time in wood, and then the temperature of the aging space and temperature fluctuations. And now in clarification, common methods used for beer clarification, so filtration, finings, and settling, lagering, aging. But now we also have to know about centrifugation. And then also consumer issues, so dietary restrictions related to isinglass, gelatin, etc. So that's the finings. In carbonation, methods of achieving carbonation of beer, so capture during fermentation, forced carbonation, secondary fermentation in a serving vessel, whether it's bottle conditioned, cask conditioned. Now we have to know about krausening, and then the sensory impact of carbonation on finished beer. And moving into packaging and pasteurization. Package types, draft bottles and cans, quality control, cleaning, sanitizing of containers, importance of air exclusion during packaging, and cap on foam. Now we get into pasteurization and its impact on beer. Previously, we just had to know about the impact on stability and flavor, but now new areas to focus on are the types of pasteurization, flash pasteurization and packaged pasteurization, but also the pasteurization conditions. And then a new section, alternative production techniques, focusing on kettle souring and high gravity brewing. So that was a lot. And I put together some summary notes. So what did I take away from this review of these two syllabuses, level 2 to level 3? So when I look at it, initially it's just 2 topic sections, right? Ingredients and processes. But it is more expansive across them, and there's deeper knowledge required now. We're expanding on the malt and grain regions and forms, hop cultivation and agronomic considerations, the hop novel products and various ways of using them in brewing, the yeast factors that are impacting fermentation and the novel yeast products, water minerals impact and more regional profiles, specialty sugars and other flavorings, the addition of special and non-traditional ingredients and the timing and impact of them, milling, mashing, lautering impacts, variations in fermentation parameters, wood aging considerations, and pasteurization methods and impacts. So that's a lot to keep someone busy that's studying for this exam. But yeah, one more section down, and I look forward to tackling section 5 in the near future and putting up another video. But if anyone watching this is in a similar state of mind, prepping for this exam, or has any comments, put them up on this video, and I'd love to hear from you. Cheers, and I'll go to enjoying my local craft beer while this thing uploads.